Joe Budden talks about switching out co-host.
I'm gonna work my way to a real rotating cast. That's what I'm going to
Yeah,
do. At
that's
at
exactly
some at some point, I'm gonna let go of the producer reins or add on to that. Like at some point, I'm just gonna add a few of the booker. I'm just gonna add a few pieces and take some of this weight off me and really kind of transition into mogul mode. What two people should get fired from Mark Lamont?
Man, let your man
I'm gonna
Ish
mute
go
up.
on to his bigger things that I know
Oh,
he had.
Micah clipped ish. I even seen some people in the community say maybe Joe should take a pod off a month. Like that's a small step.
That's right, y'all. On a recent Joe Budden TV playback, Joe Budden made no light words about how he's thinking about switching things out, how he's thinking about being a mogul, even discussing how he might, take a pod off a month. This reveals keen insights into where the show is at currently. I'm telling y'all, Joe don't like what he sees. I have to interpret it because a lot of people wait till something bad happens. A lot of people wait till somebody gets fired to talk about it. But no, I want to talk about it in real time. So what did Joe say? He was talking about, who would y'all replace if I were to bring Mark Lamont Hill on the show? Now wait, I know it was done in jest. I know it was done in, hey, it's a theoretical, guys. It's not going to happen. But let's zoom out on Mark Lamont Hill's appearance. Melissa Ford was more engaged. People were more well researched. Well, honestly, just Mark Lamont Hill. And it allowed the show to sound a little bit more mature as opposed to Ish, who people love, but not the most well researched. On top of that, if you pay attention to the end of the Mark Lamont Hill episode, what does Joe Budden say? Me and Mark Lamont are doing business. And I think he's talking about bringing a show to the network, but we all know how that usually goes when shows are being brought to the network. They don't pan out. They usually flop. And Joe just brings them on to the podcast. Remember, Melissa Ford and Queen's Flip were supposed to bring shows to the network, but instead he put them on the podcast. And speaking of Melissa Ford and Queen's Flip, remember when they were brought on? They were brought on because Ish and Ice had hit a ceiling after 2 years. And you know what version of the podcast is coming up on 2 years? The Bionic 6. So maybe Joe is looking for a new setup. Looking for someone to inject life into a podcast that is lifeless. The only one who really cares a lot is Joe. Queen's Flip cares more about his network, which is a smart move. His numbers are going up. But I gotta be honest, I'm not watching Queen's Flip for 2 hours unless he's with Joe Budden or interviewing people from the criminal underworld. I can't do it. I tried. I turned it off. You have Melissa Ford. She doesn't like the show, man. I'm sorry. I don't have any inside info except I watched the pod and I could tell she looks miserable. There's no energy for it. Ish. Oh man, don't even get me started on Ish. He looks down on this. He sees it as nonsense. You know the way people talk about me? Oh, Joe, you always talk about another dude? Again, Joe Budden with this, you talk about gossip. How can another man gossip all the time? That's how he sees the podcast. I can just tell it. His body language is trash. He got his hands in his pockets. He's worried about who I'm going to interview on my platform. And I don't think he likes how much he gets paid. I don't think he's enjoying that he came to help save his man's podcast and might be making what someone at UPS is making, probably less. And he also doesn't know how to monetize being on that platform. I don't know if he deserves to get paid more, but I can tell that the way he views things is like his time, he deserves more. Ice, gotta give it to Ice. He's professional. He shows up on time. He has his iPad. He listens to music. He knows his value. He also knows how to monetize his presence on the Joe Budden Podcast, which leads to less bitterness. Imani, he's kind of finding himself, but he's down for the ride. I don't think he loves how much he gets paid either, if I had to do the signs, but he's another person who knows how to monetize his presence a little bit. He's going to drop an album, and I think members of the show will support. He'll probably do a YouTube channel, and he can get on the algorithm like Flip did. Don't think I don't know what Flip did. He used that YouTube algorithm, right? The YouTube algorithm, it's not a person, but it's a thing. It knows, hey, man, Flip is on the Joe Budden Podcast. So, let me suggest content from Flip to people who watch the Joe Budden Podcast. Same thing Rory and Mal did. We're just seeing it happen in real time. But with that said, let me know what you think. I would say if Joe Budden is openly discussing switching people out, he's already thought about it to a great extent. He's already been given this like at least a couple brainstorms. He's talking to Ian about it. He's talking about the dynamics of the podcast. And like I said before, oh man, I know other members of the pod don't love this discussion. They probably gonna hit Joe, or they're not gonna hit Joe. They're not gonna tell Joe anything. They're gonna actually talk about me and how problematic I am versus addressing they mans who cut their checks. I'm sure they wish that certain members of that wouldn't be discussed in these spaces. They don't want anybody to know that they slacking. They want to see this as, hey, I just show up, cut the check, and that's it. But Joe is an independent operation. He's not like iHeart where he could afford people cutting slack. He's not worth $238 million like iHeart. He's not worth $68 billion like Spotify. This is a small operation, man. This ain't Walmart. You see someone slacking, you observe it. It hurts. It cuts you a little bit harder. It cuts. So the pod members on the show, step it up or step off, because your replacement has already been on the show, whether it be Ray Daniels, whether it be Mark Lamont Hill. And don't even get me started on the other phase, which is you don't get replaced completely. You just lose time on the show. You appear on the episodes maybe once a week, maybe twice a week, but you just know that the audience is going to miss you less and less. That's another thing. Joe thinks that, hey, man, I just want to cycle people in and out. Well, what if you catch magic? What if one of the iterations of the show really takes root and people love it? I love Mark Lamont Hill. He's the best thing ever since sliced bread. Then the value of your other co-hosts start to dip. Then new allegiances start to sprout up. Melissa Ford starts hitting up Mark Lamont Hill like, this is just so mean to me. That's what happened with Flip and Melissa Ford, but Flip didn't know how to handle a relationship with one of his co-hosts. So she eventually distanced herself from Flip because he really wasn't invested in actually being her friend. Just more so the optics of it. Anyway, I think we did the science today. I got more content coming. Follow me on Instagram, The Stop TV. Follow me on Twitter, The Stop TV. This is Danny from The Stop. Peace.